Micromanaging a highly intelligent individual is basically bullying. A manager who micromanages a highly intelligent individual lacks emotional intelligence, lacks skills as a manager, and doesn't really understand what a highly intelligent individual can do for the company, the kind of abilities and skills that they actually have. Highly intelligent individuals are extremely creative and they're able to make innovations and be visionary and do really great things and new things with their skills. But in order to do those things, they need a lot of freedom in their jobs. But if a manager is micromanaging a highly intelligent individual, the highly intelligent individual will start to shrink down and play small in their job. They realize that they're not able to use their skills and their creativity in their job. So they might as well just do the bare minimum. Sometimes the managers of highly intelligent individuals actually realize the skills of their employees. And then they feel that those skills are actually a threat to them and they start to micromanage these individuals. If a highly intelligent individual finds themselves in this sort of position, the best thing to do is usually leave that boss, because you are just going to start resisting yourself, resisting your need to create, resisting that need to use your intellect.
Everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Sarah, and on this video we're going to look into the psychology of when a micromanager leads a high-performing employee team leader. So what happens when you put a micromanager in charge of a high performer? You get one of the most frustrating relationships in the workplace. I can attest. The leader says something like, "I just want accountability," right? And the high performer hears, "You don't trust me," or something like that, right? The leader sees potential. Absolutely, they do see it. They've actually probably verbalized it. And the high performer sees often interference. And eventually, both people start thinking, why is this relationship so difficult? Here's the uncomfortable truth, my friends. Sometimes the micromanager isn't threatened because the employee is doing poorly. They're threatened because the employee is doing exceptionally well. Yes, you would think that would be a good thing to do well, right, for the team? So let's talk about the psychology behind this tension and how these two people can actually work together. How about that? So get your pens and papers out, all right? So let's look at the psychological matchup here between these two entities. A high performer typically values autonomy, yes, competence, efficiency, and a dash of achievement, right? And the high performer often thinks, give me the goal, the vision, give me the resources, and let me just execute. I got this, right? And a micromanager may value certainty, predictability, control, and visibility. And the micromanager thinks, you know what? I need to know what's happening before it becomes a problem. You see the conflict here? The high performer is trying to do work, all happy. The micromanager is thinking problems. One person needs freedom to perform, the high performer, and the other person needs oversight, controlling oversight, to feel secure. Neither person necessarily thinks they're doing anything wrong. See, they're operating from completely different psychological needs, to be fair, right? Now, let's look at why the leader, right, the micromanager, may feel threatened by the high performer, yes? So here's where it gets a tad interesting. The micromanager may recognize that this employee is talented. Yes, okay, yes to you too. They see initiative, right? They see intelligence, all right? They see independence. They may even see influence of this high performer in the organization, in the team. They see someone who could potentially become a future leader. That should make the leader excited, you would think, well, a healthy minded leader, but an insecure leader may experience that this potential is actually a threat, right? And psychology sometimes describes this through status threat or ego threat. That's the term, status threat or ego threat. See, the leader may unconsciously think, if this person becomes too influential, where does that leave me? Woe is me, right? This is the micromanaging leader. So instead of developing the high performer, they will increase oversight over the high performer. They'll ask more questions. They'll, give more corrections. They'll get more involved. They need more control, all right? And this high performer, innocent employee thinks, why are you managing me more when I'm producing more? That's the paradox. It's so confusing, right? I've had clients under these kind of circumstances. So confusing and debilitating, right? Now, let's look at what's the high performer experience through the lens of a high performer. For a high performer, micromanagement can feel particularly frustrating. Let me know if that's been you, because their identity may be connected to competence and achievement. And they're proving that they can deliver. So repeated checkings can feel less like accountability and more like an attack on their competence. You see? And psychologically, this can create reactance, the natural resistance people experience when they believe their freedom or their autonomy is being unnecessarily restricted, right? If you know what I mean, let me know in the comment section. See, the employee may become less enthusiastic over time. They may stop volunteering ideas, right? And they may emotionally withdraw, simply just disengage, all right? And eventually they may even think, you know what, if this leader doesn't trust me or trust my judgment, why am I here? Hello, been there? Yes. That's when a valuable employee can quietly move from engaged to just being checked out, right? And sometimes they don't leave the organization. No, the high performer will stay, but they leave the relationship with that micromanaging leader. There's an emotional disconnect that can actually happen, right? So let's look at the high performers' big mistake, because sometimes high performers can make some mistakes. So high performers do need to hear this too. So if you're a high performer, please pay attention. Your competence does not automatically make you easy to manage. Imagine that. You may be thinking, my results speak for themselves, right? And maybe they do, right? You're a great asset to the organization. But leadership isn't only about results. If you communicate with impatience, dismiss questions, or make your leader feel excluded, you may unintentionally activate the very behavior you are trying to escape. Yeah, let's sit with that. Because see, remember, your manager may need information before they need reassurance. All right? So don't respond to micromanagement with, an attitude, like a negative one. Respond with some predictability. Okay? Give proactive updates before they ask. Clarify expectations, okay? Confirm deadlines, right? Tell your leader when you're going to provide progress reports. Just overgive sometimes. And when you disagree, don't say something like, I know what I'm doing. That's pretty dismissive, right? Instead, try something like, here's my approach, leader. Here's why I recommend this. And here's how I'll keep you updated or in the loop, right? They'll appreciate that. You're not surrendering your autonomy in this, not at all. You're collaborating. You're reducing their uncertainty. Remember, we're dealing with a personality that may be feeling insecure and just doesn't trust you yet, right? So you're just reducing their uncertainty because there's some fear there in their soul. Now let's look at what the micromanager also needs to understand. Now, leaders, this is part for you as well. All right, you listening there? If you've hired a high performer, don't now punish them with being capable. All right, your job isn't to make them smaller so you can feel big. All right, your job is to develop the capacity you have identified. That's why they're there. All right, or if you didn't hire them, somebody else did and they saw that. So if you're constantly overriding their decisions, you create in them learned dependency. They stop thinking independently because you've trained them to wait for your approval. That's going to bite you in the butt one day. And eventually you may complain. Why doesn't my team take initiative? Because you taught them not to. So if the employee consistently performs, give them increasing levels of autonomy. Set the outcome. That's all you need to do. Set the vision, set the goal. You can define the boundaries, right? Establish checkpoints. You know, when you want to meet up, when you want to talk over some progress, then just get out of the way. Just move on to other things. You're a leader. You should be focusing on the future. Now that's delegation. All right, micromanagers, learn delegation. Learn your people, learn to delegate. Now, how can these two work together? Here's a practical framework. All right, so for the high performer, I would want you to create visibility for your micromanager. Let them in. Don't make your leader chase you for information. All right, use short, predictable updates. You know, what's done, what's next, what's blocked out, what decision you need them to make, for example. This gives the leader visibility without giving them control over every detail. All right, so for the leader, you need to also create boundaries. All right, you could do that. Don't interrupt constantly. Instead, establish agreed upon checkpoints. For instance, you could say, let's meet every Friday to review progress unless something urgent comes up. You could say this to your high performer direct report. And that gives you, leader, certainty, and it gives the employee some autonomy as well. All right, that's a much more healthier exchange, in my opinion. Now, I also like to balance psychology with biblical wisdom, so here we go. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 1, it says, a soft answer turns away wrath, anger, hostility. Now, that doesn't mean becoming passive. It just means learning how to communicate without escalating the emotional temperature, because that can happen amongst these two personalities. And the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 17, it reminds us that iron sharpens iron. So in other words, a strong employee and a strong leader should be able to challenge one another without becoming enemies. Okay? The goal isn't control, all right? The goal is fruitfulness. In other words, productivity. Let's also look in the book of Philippians, chapter 2, verse 3. It reminds us to value others rather than operating from a selfish ambition or conceit. And that applies to both types of personalities, okay? So the leader doesn't have to prove superiority, right? The micromanager does not always have to be proven superiority, and the high performer does not have to prove independence. All right? Okay, good. So let's look at the real solution here, some additional solution. See, this relationship becomes tolerable when both people, both personalities, understand what the other person needs. See, the micromanager often needs visibility, and confidence that the work is under control. You see? And the high performer needs trust and room to execute. Quiet as it's kept, the high performer is a leader themselves. This is part of the tension. But anyway, solutions. So we need to build a system that provides both, right? So the leader, here's what success looks like, right? You could say something like, here's what success looks like. Here's what I need to know. Here's when we will check in, right? And for the high performer, you could say something like, here's what I'm doing. Here's my progress. Here's where I need your input, right? And here's where I can handle it independently. Now, you are not fighting personalities. That's the goal here, to not fight each other, right? It's important that we learn how to manage the relationship. In any type of group work, it's important to learn to manage the relationship healthy. So if you are a high performer dealing with a micromanager, don't immediately assume that every question means that they're trying to undermine you, but also watch for tone, but that's another video. But sometimes they're managing from anxiety. This micromanager is also managing from anxiety. So just bear that in mind, just to give them some grace. Learn to give them visibility without surrendering your confidence. Very important you don't lose your confidence. And if you are the micromanager, please don't automatically interpret independence as disrespect. Come on now. Sometimes your strongest employee isn't challenging your authority. They're just showing you what they are capable of doing for you and for the rest of the team in the organization. So your responsibility is to recognize the difference between accountability and control, okay? Because the best leaders don't create employees who constantly need them. I mean, goodness, don't you want to breathe? Don't you want to have creativity times, leader? See, they create people, best leaders create people who are capable of succeeding with them and eventually without them. And the best high performers do not simply demand freedom, okay? They learn how to build trust. Yes. So there's work to be done on both sides. See, when both sides do this, the tension can become something productive. The leader provides direction, the high performer provides execution, and together they can create results that neither could actually produce effectively alone. So I really hope you all got something from this. Feel free to rewatch this again and take some notes, share it with your team. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up before you head out, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.